My face turned blue. Lightning started flashing, thunder started clashing. White lightning.
I do defend and believe that the government should not be involved with institutional racism or discrimination or segregation in schools, busing, all of those things. But had I been there, there would have been some discussion over one of the titles of the civil rights. And I think that's a valid point, still a valid discussion, because the thing is if we want to harbor in on private businesses and their policies, then you have to have the discussion about, do you want to abridge the First Amendment as well?
Woo boy! Dr. Rand Paul, fresh off his big victory for that Senate primary in Kentucky, for some reason decided it was important to go on the Rachel Maddow show, and he went on Rachel Maddow last night, and now everybody's talking about it. He joins us now. Dr. Rand Paul, how are you?
Boy, no rest for the weary, I tell you.
Well, what went down with this conversation? I mean, we heard part of what you said on NPR, and then we heard part of what you said on MSNBC about the Civil Rights Act and desegregation.
Well, the interesting thing is I have no idea why this is being brought up, because I don't favor any change in the civil rights legislation, nor have I promoted that. So it's kind of an interesting conversation that people want to talk about this. But, no, I have always been opposed my entire adult life to any type of institutional racism. I think it was, really an abomination that it took us the interesting thing is in Boston, we got rid of segregation and got rid of the problems with the Jim Crow laws in the 1840s. Took us another 120 years in the South to get rid of the Jim Crow laws. And I think that's sort of a stain and a blight on our history. And so, no, I've never really favored any change in the Civil Rights Act or any of that, but they have seemed to have unleashed some of the loony left on me.
Let's play for you. This was a question that Rachel Maddow asked you, again, in this discussion of what you would have done if you were around during the debate about the Civil Rights Act and what private businesses can and cannot do. And she specifically focused on the Bob Jones University. Let's listen.
Until the year 2000, Bob Jones University, a private institution, had a ban on interracial dating at their school. They're a private institution. If Bob Jones University wanted to bring that back now, would you support their right to do so?
I'm going to give you a chance to answer it again, Dr. Paul.
Any institution that takes public funding or is in the public venue doesn't have the right to discriminate.
Was that exactly what you said last night?
I'm not sure. We went round and around on the issue, and I think the problem with Rachel Maddow and most people from the left is they want to make this an issue about you supporting abhorrent practices, which I don't support. I don't support any kind of racism, any kind of discrimination, any kind of segregation, and I really think that it's a problem that it took so long in our country to even get there, William Lloyd Garrison is a real hero of mine. He was an abolitionist who fought for 40 years before we finally convinced the government, to end slavery. And he also fought to end segregation in Boston in the 1830s and 40s. And it's always amazed me that it took us so long in the South to get beyond that. And I think there was a need for federal intervention to say that you can't have segregation and that we shouldn't be doing that. So there's really nothing about these issues or constitutional issues that have been brought up in the past that really I'm in favor of revisiting at all.
This is how you answered the question last night. Let's listen.
Well, I think it's interesting because the debate involves more than just that, because the debate also...
Mr. Paul, but the Commerce Clause point you made, I think, does go right to the heart of what we're seeing now with the constitutional challenges of the health care bill. And is that what you were getting at there?
Yes, and the thing about the Commerce Clause is we used to say that commerce was things going on between the states. Originally, the Founding Fathers had the Interstate Commerce Clause put in the Constitution so we wouldn't have tariffs between states. But we ultimately made it to where now we use the Commerce Clause to apply to everything, including health care. I tell people often that if my shoes were made in Tennessee, they'll regulate my walking in Kentucky. And so really the Commerce Clause came to mean anything, and it also came to mean that there still are discussions going on. The other discussion we had is whether or not, if you own your restaurant, you can make the decision not to admit people with guns. And because of some of the confusion over some of these issues, there are people now arguing that a private restaurant can't make those decisions because it's a public place, not a private place. So we have this debate still all of the time, but I think what gets lost in the debate is that in no way do I favor any type of institutional racism or segregation or discrimination or any of that. And I think that's what gets lost, and the left brings this up because they want to tar and feather the right and make them out to be something that we're not.
Well, I think anytime you even, discuss the constitutional underpinnings of these big pieces of legislation, and you start talking about the intricacies of the debate and what the states were going through and the federal government's role, and you don't just unequivocally come out and say, what the left, and I would imagine most of America believes about, the Civil Rights Act, then they are going to use that. And that leads me to my next question, which is, why would you go on Rachel Maddow's show and think I said this, I said, who the heck's advising Dr. Paul? I got to call him up and tell him the show's to go on. I mean, why? I mean, I think Rachel Maddow, she represents her view, and I she represents it, and I think she tries to be, fair, I guess, to the extent that she's a liberal. But, what do you think you're going to get when you go on Rachel Maddow's show? That's the kind of questions you are going to get.
You're right, and it was a poor political decision, probably won't be happening anytime in the near future. Because they conflate things and want to say, oh, you believe in beating up people that were trying to sit in restaurants in the 1960s, and that's such a ridiculous notion and something that no rational person is in favor of, that she went on and on about that. But no, I think that this is settled. These are settled issues of the Civil Rights Act. I have no intention of bringing up anything related to the Civil Rights Act. I don't.
Okay, and Dr. Paul.
Civil Rights Act.
Yeah. So, Dr. Paul, let's get this straight. You are not for a ban on interracial dating.
Not for a ban on interracial dating. No.
All right, we appreciate it, Dr. Rand Paul.
Do you think the 64 Civil Rights Act, or the ADA for that matter, were just overreaches and that business shouldn't be bothered by people with the basis in law to sue them for redress?
I think a lot of things could be handled locally. I think if you have a 2-story office and you hire someone who's handicapped, it might be reasonable to let them have an office on the first floor rather than the government saying you have to have a $100,000 elevator. And I think when you get to solutions like that, the more local the better, and the more common sense the decisions are rather than having a federal government make those decisions.
The left is all a Twitter. Twittering all over the internet on Rand Paul's interviews yesterday. He was asked about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He continues with us for just a few minutes. Then we have to get right to Newt Gingrich, who has a fabulous new book out called To Save America. Dr. Paul, just to wrap this up, because we had to kind of abruptly end the last segment because we ran out of time. If you were alive at that time, would you have voted for the Civil Rights Act?
Yes, because I think the preponderance of the evidence was that we had some abhorrent things going on in our society, segregation, the Jim Crow laws. These things were so abhorrent that I think the South had failed, and that the federal government did have a role in ending discrimination in all of these practices.
And Dr. Paul, did you happen to see what happened yesterday with President Calderon coming to the White House, criticizing the United States, the Arizona law, and the president essentially agreeing with him?
Yeah, I think he needs to mind his own business, and he's got a lot of problems in Mexico that he needs to take care of on his side of the border.
Well, clean up your own house before you come up to someone else's house and start telling them to pick up the vacuum cleaner, right? Dr. Paul, hey, we appreciate your coming on, and I wouldn't waste so much of your time on MSNBC in the future.
Thanks, Laura.
All right, you take care.